Damascus will cease from being a city. It will be a ruinous heap. Let's talk about that. Get your coffee. If you've spent any time around Christians and churches, I'm sure you've noticed that Christians have a spectrum of beliefs as it relates to apocalyptic literature, the prophetic passages of the Bible. There are those that view the prophetic writings of individuals like Isaiah or other Old Testament prophets as having a focus near to the times in which those prophets lived. Their writings had contemporary historical focuses. They predicted things that came to pass near to the times in which they lived and in the places that they lived, or at least within a relatively short time of their lifespan. But then there are others who understood that the writings of these individuals have a further reach. They predicted things that would come to pass maybe hundreds of years after they lived. They would be fulfilled at the time of first century Israel, during the time of Christ, or shortly after the time of Christ. And of course, there are others who believe that the writings of these prophets, someone like Isaiah, have a much further reach, maybe even into the far future of our time, of our day. So there are many different views among Christians surrounding prophetic writings. Some have a historical kind of Israel-centric view. Some hold a first century Christocentric view, and others have a futurist view. I'm one that's fine acknowledging that the words of Jeremiah or Daniel or Isaiah or others had near, far, and very far future ramifications. It is important to recognize that many of the things that Isaiah wrote were fulfilled within his lifetime or in a very short period after he died. And he certainly predicted things that were fulfilled in Christ or in the church. And it is passages like the one that we are open to today in Isaiah chapter 17 that cause some Christians to believe that Isaiah's words reach nearly 3 millennia into the future, to our day. Because Isaiah 17 predicts, or at least seems to predict, the total destruction of Damascus, Syria, the capital of Syria, to the point that the city ceases to be a city. Why is that significant? Because according to some historians, Damascus is considered to be one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. It has seen its share of invasions and destructions, but has it ever ceased from being a city? Has it ever become a total ruinous heap? According to some, the answer to the question is no. So for many futurists, those who look at passages like Isaiah's words as reaching far into the future, into our day, let's just say that for many of those futurists, they keep a close eye on something like Damascus because of Isaiah chapter 17, considering it to be a potential key indicator for end times events. Now, with that in mind, I think it is worth considering that some predictions from the prophets, like the prophet Isaiah, they have multiple fulfillments. We would call those multiple fulfillments early and latter fulfillments. For example, the virgin birth prophecy of Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. It had a clear early fulfillment in Isaiah's day, but it also had a further fulfillment in Christ. Or Isaiah chapter 61, verses 1 and 2. They had an early fulfillment in Christ's first coming. You can see that in Luke chapter 4, but those words will also have a future fulfillment at his second coming. This is possibly true for Isaiah chapter 17 as well. Syria and the northern 10 tribes of Israel, they were judged and pulverized, really, you could say, by the Assyrian invasion in the 8th century BC. So Isaiah 17 has clear connections to the judgment by the Assyrians at that time. That was the early or the near fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 17. But again, it doesn't appear that Damascus has ceased from being a city. So possibly there is a yet unfulfilled judgment that is still to come. I bring all of this up to say that whatever your view is on Bible prophecy or apocalyptic literature, like these passages on Isaiah, you should hold those views at least humbly. Don't hold those views too tightly or dogmatically. Be open to the fact that these words may have a wider reach than you realize. And in a passage like Isaiah chapter 17, keep a close watch on the prophetic landmark of the words "in that day." They show up 5 times in this passage. Something to think about. We'll see you next time.